Welcome to Focus Consulting Group's podcast. I am delighted today to be joined by my partners, our founder, Jim Ware, Liz Severns, and Brian Kozlowski. And at the end of the year, we always like to take a little bit of a retrospective, but we're going to go way back this time because some of you may know that next year is our 25th year. We will have been doing this for 25 years, and we want to give you an opportunity to learn some of the things that we've learned over that 25-year period. So we've been serving the investment community for that long. We've learned a couple things, and we're certainly going to want to share those with you today. So welcome, Jim, Liz, and Brian. And I think maybe
Thank
we
you.
start with a fundamental question, Jim. Why did you start all this stuff?
Yeah, good question. Because we always ask our clients, well, why are you doing this? This was started. I had a thought back when I worked for Gary Brinson that he was onto something with the way he thought culture was important. And of course, Keith has worked with Gary as well. And then Gary wrote an article for the CFA Institute called Culture in the Investment Firm. And that was probably the first little seed that got planted. And one of the things in that article was the phrase about making an organization a great place to work. And that's been for me kind of the underlying tagline is I really like to help organizations build great places to work. And I'm thinking, Keith, of the time you and I were over in Europe doing work, and one of the people after a session said, "You guys are bringing the light." And that was a very proud moment and a happy moment when I thought, here we are bringing light in the sense of if you work in this fashion, you'll be happy, energized, engaged. And so that was sort of underlying right from the start was that notion of, investment organizations need a good culture and the good culture provides a great place to work.
Yeah, I remember that day vividly. It was also one of the highlights of my journey with Focus. So let's talk a little bit about highlights of our journeys with Focus because Liz has been with Focus Consulting Group the longest. And then I joined in 2010, and then Brian joined. So we've got three sort of different generations, if you will, of partners here. And so maybe we'll start with further back in time. Liz, what are a couple of highlights from your work with Focus Consulting Group and specifically with our clients? What are some things that really are memorable for you?
Yeah, so I'm coming up on my 18th year out of this 25th year, and I just feel incredibly lucky to be working with the clients that we've worked with over the years. In my role at Focus, I'm one of the only ones that get to touch all of our clients and gets to interact with all of our clients. And so I've seen all of the possibilities that clients can have when they do exactly what Jim says, which is want to make great places to work for their employees and for their colleagues and for their team members. And so it's been real highlight for me to be able to watch organizations over time really dedicate themselves to understanding that organizational health, culture, making people happy isn't a project, but it's a process, and that they embrace that process. We've been blessed with clients that have been at Focus since the start, not because of dependency by any means, but because we create these partnerships with the same intention and the same mission, which is creating great places to work. So for me, that has been a highlight and a blessing for the last 18 years that I am honored to continue on the journey with these clients doing those things.
Yeah, it's very rewarding. I can speak for myself. It's very rewarding to have clients that come back episodically to continue to sharpen their saw on culture, on the experience of working at their firm, on creating an investment edge through things that I would call unconventional are the things that we do. And it's really rewarding to see those clients come back again and again. And it's even more rewarding when they actually advertise for you and they're willing to talk about their journey with Focus over the years and how it's really helped them. Jim, I hope you're really proud of that fact because that has really created quite the following. So Brian is the newest member of Focus, but I say that a little bit laughing because you've been here for a while as well. But You joined Focus. You'd been with other firms before. What's sort of your highlight reel of your Focus journey thus far?
Yeah, great question. So I'm coming up on my ninth year in January, which is very hard to believe. And I think for me, it's the relationship, the deep bond that we create with clients that really is meaningful to me. I remember my first days at Casey Quirk, I was trying to pick John Casey's brain about pearls of how to be successful in the industry. And I'll never forget this conversation. John said to me, "This is a talent business, Brian, and those firms that don't understand that will struggle to be successful." And it has rung true over since that conversation through to today. For me, in working with firms on both strategy and rewards, the ability on a strategy side to really get inside an organization, to know them, and to bring strategy to life. It's not just words on a paper, but how it impacts each individual in the organization and the impact they, in turn, have on the strategy. That's unbelievably rewarding. When you see firms go through one, sometimes two, sometimes three strategies together, and to see how individuals have progressed on that journey, to see how the firm has grown both asset wise, revenue wise, but reputation wise, and that's inside and outside. Rewards plans, I would say, are the same thing to be able to help folks feel as if they're being fairly rewarded for the effort they're providing, to see that transparency and simplicity, but also to feel that bond to the organization, to feel as if they're all moving in the same direction and how culture and strategy come together in a rewards plan. I think I can confidently say this, that bond that we create with clients is very unique. We have often said to everyone on this podcast that many of our clients don't see us as consultants. They see us as partners. And that's really in the truest form of the word. And whether it be engaged in a project or whether it be just a friendly call, that's been something that's really unique and something that Jim has helped to build over the last 25 years.
Yeah. So in case you're all wondering, there's a theme that's building here, and that's really all about partnership and relationship. I've been in this industry almost 40 years now and seen all sorts of sides of it. But the one thing that really strikes me about my journey with Focus is two things, actually. One, I get to be in my genius more often than not, which is really fun for me. And it really is, as Warren Buffett said, it's like tap dancing to work every day. And that's pretty rewarding. The other thing is, and it's actually on the back wall here behind me, a letter that we received from a client, and not to be morbid about it, but he was on his deathbed, and he took time to write to Jim and I about the impact we had, not just in his business, but in his life and his relationships beyond work. So this theme of relationships is really strong with us, and what we know is, as everybody likes to tell you, this is a talent business, so your talent matters. And for those who work with us, they work with us because they really understand how much talent matters and how important it is in their relationships with their clients to make sure that we're all doing what we can. So we raise, the rising tide lifting all of boats. So, Jim, thinking about that in the last 25 years, what are you most proud of in the last 25 years? What do you, when you reflect, you go, wow, that was really a great accomplishment. I'm really happy about that.
Well, and the word happy is where I would focus. I mean, I'm sort of proud of things, but what I'm focusing on is what made me happy. And one thing that made me really happy was that we provided a service in the industry that didn't seem to be filled. There weren't any. This was total blue ocean, to use that term, meaning it's not shark filled with chum. It's empty of competitors when we started, and still pretty much is. And yet it was very needed. And so it was a pleasure to realize this is something that would be of service and would help the industry. So that was something I was happy about. You could say I was proud of it, but the material that we bring to the industry, which has been thought about and researched over the years, and that's things like all the way back to high performing investment teams, 2006, that material. Our publisher has said, do you want to rework the book, rewrite it? And I've said, no, I think it really stands the test of time. And then we have these wonderful little additions to the language of the industry, because culture is a lot about language. And the firms we work with, they all begin to talk about over and under the line and the red X. And Keith and I wrote a paper called Tribes, where we discussed the investment folks, the operations folks, the marketing sales people, and that also has legs. People still talk about that. So this is material that is really strong, and that's why people still use it and still talk about it. Keith mentioned how we've changed people's lives. I'm thinking of several leaders who have told me that focus changed their life, and this would be people that the folks on my team know: Fred Martin, Britt Harris, Craig Senek. All those people have told me that our organization was really important to them in their leadership and in their running of the company. So that obviously feels really good to reflect on that. The team members, I'm very happy, and I would say proud of the team that we have in the past, but particularly the one we have now. So the 4 partners who are discussing the business right now, but then we have 6 additional people who are top notch, and talk about relationships. They are just terrific at building strong relationships. And then I'll say the final thing would be survival. I mean, I'm proud that we survived for this long, because it's not easy to hang a shingle and eventually have a full-blown organization with senior partners. And I'm proud of the succession that we achieved, where Keith and Liz and Brian are really running things beautifully now. And so there's lots to be happy about.
Yeah. Jim, it's interesting. And I think that this is something that is important for our listeners. You mentioned 3 great leaders, right? You mentioned Craig, and you mentioned Fred, and you mentioned Britt. And what makes them great is their ability to be constant in what they do and how they do it, and to stay focused. Liz talked about culture is not a project. It's not. It's a process that continually has to grow and develop. If you had to think about things that have been constant from our experience with our clients to create success, what were those things that were constants that good leaders like you mentioned did time and time again?
Well, first, let me say that the reason why I think we have such good success in our work is that we know the industry's people really well. So we're not coming in and saying, tell me a little about this industry and what do they do and what are their people like. I think there's a particular type of person that's attracted to the investment world, and that's a constant. And we know from studying personality styles that we get a lot of 3s, we get a lot of 1s, we get a lot of 2s. Those are, for the people who don't know the Enneagram, those are achiever type personalities. And we know those personalities, Myers-Briggs language, I'd be like NTJs. And that's what we're dealing with. And that has been pretty constant over time. But I think we were smart as an organization to realize that age matters. So that personality style has been constant, but then we had the millennials come in, and Keith took the lead in really understanding what that meant to the changing nature of the people we worked with. But type of people, I think, is a constant. I think the formula for success, and Brian, you would weigh in on this, has been pretty constant. You've got to create value. And it's getting much tougher, and that would be like alpha. You've got to create investment returns that people can't get by indexing, right? And you've got to keep your clients happy. So you've got to have good rapport with your clients, and then the trains need to arrive and leave on time. That's the back office. So that basic formula has remained in place, I think. Brian, is that a good statement or?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. And I think, the piece I'll add on top of that, the competitive nature, you touched on the investment performance and clients. It's also the people. The firms are in a competitive landscape to keep their talent, and talent is continually being pulled in different directions. And so firms have to, in our vernacular, they have to think of the CEO model when they think of how to run their firm. How do you keep your clients? How do you keep your employees? And then if you have owners, how do you keep your owners happy? And that's really the balance.
Yeah, that notion of talent, I didn't even think of that when I originally thought about what are the constants, but that's a constant. It's a talent business, and you need to get the most out of your talent. I think that's another tagline for what Focus does, and what I'm happy or proud about is that we've always focused on how are you going to get the very most out of your people in a good way. Not that you're going to suck them dry and burn them up and leave them, wasted on the sidewalk. No, you're going to put them in the right jobs. You're going to develop them. You're going to coach and train them in a way that is inspiring so that they feel energized at the end of the day. And we've all embraced that, and that's what we aim for in an engagement.
So as you think about the things that we call constants, right, around performance and people, right, process, philosophy, right, those P's in the investment industry. If you were advising investment leaders in going forward, what would you advise them to pay attention to?
Yeah, so the talent, obviously, you've got to have strong talent. But what we've found, and Brian and I worked on a paper in this regard, and I don't think it's changed, is leaders need to pay attention to three things. They've got to have a clear and inspiring vision of what the organization's about and why people should care about it. And then secondly, what the strategy is to achieve it. So it's, where are we going and how are we going to get there? That has to be, if you said to a CEO, here's a room full of your people, quick, talk to them. That would be what they should start with. Here's why we exist, here's where we're heading, and here's how we're going to get there. That's going to get everybody's interest. We've also learned that from our research that the right team members are important. So leaders need to make tough choices about who to bring in, how to get the talent. And if you have what we call a red X, which is a problem personality in the organization, how to manage that so that it doesn't become toxic. And then the third thing we found was just trust, which sounds obvious, but it's a moving target. Trust can be really good one day and then something happens and it goes down the next day. So you've got to continually to work on trust. We wrote a paper that seemed to be popular called Trust is Like Kitchen Fires, and it's in the sense of you've got to manage it day to day. And if there's a kitchen fire, you don't ignore it and watch the news in the family room. You take care of that kitchen fire. And that's how trust is in the organizations.
Yeah, and I think the underpinnings of all that is what I think in many ways what we were founded on, which is building great places to work, and you do that through a great culture. And so bringing people in is important. Do you use culture as a screen, right? In my mind, the technical capabilities and the track record they're just the ticket to the dance. But if you really want to dance, you have to fit within the culture of the organization. Otherwise, you're going to create a problem, right? So for me, that's the other, we talk about mission, vision, strategy, and then the other pillar there is culture and the ability to really focus on that, build that, grow that such that people who are there, they're not just there for the money, right? They're there because they care about their colleagues. They have a great experience. They grow, they develop, and all those other things. So, Jim, any predictions for the next 25?
That's a tough one. I would say that one of my predictions as I think about the future is that the industry will continue to be really tough. And what I mean by that is the active managers. So if you're Vanguard and all you're trying to do is just index money, that's kind of a different equation from what we normally work with. We work with managers who are set up to outperform and are responsible to somebody, clients or boards or somebody to do that. I think that's going to be increasingly harder and harder to really do that. It's like pro sports. I mean, you think about what it takes to be in a Super Bowl football team. I mean, it's outrageously difficult. So that's a prediction of what the competitive landscape will be. I think in order to compete with that, I think we're going to see a lot of artificial intelligence stuff. And I'm glad we have Paul on our team, Paul Zemsky from Voya, who was their CIO. He has a deep interest in it. The rest of us have an interest in it, but he has a deep interest. I think that's going to take on a new life, and we'll see things that we don't expect. It's like 30 years ago, we never knew we'd have phones where, we can do everything we need to do in a phone. I think we're going to be amazed by what AI offers. Other expectations for a long period in the future? I'd be interested to hear what my partners have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say there will be some things I think will be a constant if you have people involved, and we've harped on culture, and I'll harp on it one more time. Building a place that people are attracted to, not because they have to come back to work or come back to the office, because they want to and they enjoy it there and they're stimulated, right? They're getting new ideas, they're growing and they're developing. That's how you keep your talent. Anybody can write a check, but the experience, and we have clients, we could just run down the list of clients who've created these experiences where people will never leave until they retire. And it doesn't really matter how much they're paid, right? It's the other things that really drive on that. So that's my thought. Brian, what's your thought?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the one, building on that, the one thing we hear in our rewards work, specifically on the data on talent development. We as an industry have been slow to get there. I think we're being pushed by the younger generations to make it a much more important part of who we are. Building a little bit on what Jim said on I think we're going to see an industry over the next 25 years really built on the back of developing our talent, making sure, understanding technology, understanding how we get that edge. Jim's right. Generating the returns is not going to get any easier. I think as we combine the technology abilities with just learning and skill, that's how firms are going to differentiate themselves. So I think it's going to be a foundation on talent development in many different areas.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Liz? What do you think?
Yeah, I would think the same as everybody else said, in the sense of that talent is going to continue to be one of those constants that is your most important asset. And leaders, I think, are going to continue, or at least I hope will continue to focus on that as being their most important asset. And the ones that are going to be adaptable, the ones that are going to be flexible, the ones that are going to put that front and center will be able to face those headwinds of the markets that Jim and Brian were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been wonderful doing a little bit of reflecting and learning and talking about that. So, certainly on behalf of Focus Consulting Group, I want to thank you all for listening. Personally, Jim, I want to thank you for the journey for this 15 years, and I look forward to 15 more. It's been a lot of fun and it's been one heck of a ride. So, thank you for taking us on that journey, and the journey will continue under the leadership of all of our partners and all of our consultants. So thanks, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.